Imagine a world teetering on the edge of the familiar, a place where the fabric of the everyday begins to unravel, revealing glimpses of the extraordinary lurking beneath. You're about to embark on a journey into the enigmatic, where the peculiar and the perplexing intertwine, where every tale twists the mind and tugs at the spirit. It's a descent into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. This is When Reality Frays. New episodes are published every Monday and Thursday, and When Reality Frays is available everywhere fine podcasts are found. Before we move on, please hit that follow or subscribe button and turn on all reminders so you're alerted when new episodes are released. Today's episode contains two stories. First up is The Chameleon's Curse, a story about a monster's reign of terror over a small Colombian village. And the second story of the day is The Poison Pen, an incredible story about the psychological torture of an entire town. Now, let's get to the stories. In the shadow of Colombia's Andes, a tiny village faced an unspeakable terror. A creature that walked as a man by day and hunted as a monster by night. They called it the Chameleon, and its reign of fear left scars that linger to this day. Was it a demon, a myth, or a truth too dark to face? This is the story of the Chameleon's Curse. In the summer of 1977, the village of San Vicente, a speck on the map of Colombia's Caqueta region, was a world unto itself. Hemmed in by towering Andean peaks and a jungle that teemed with secrets, its 200 residents lived a life of quiet resilience. Coffee beans dried in the sun, children played in dusty lanes, and the church bell called the faithful to Mass. It was a place where faith and folklore intertwined, where stories of duendes, mischievous spirits, and ancient curses were as real as the rain. But that summer, San Vicente would face a terror that no prayer could banish, a shadow that would haunt its people for generations. The first sign came in late June, subtle as a shiver. Rosa Maria Vargas, a 42-year-old mother of four with a reputation for steely resolve, noticed a stranger in the village market. He was tall, his face half hidden by a straw hat, but his eyes were sharp, almost luminous, and locked onto hers. It wasn't just a look, Rosa later told her neighbors, clutching her rosary so tight it left marks on her palm. It was like he saw my soul. That night, she awoke to a guttural howl, a sound that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Peering through her window, she saw it, a creature nearly 7 feet tall, with bat-like wings and eyes that glowed like embers, crouching in her yard. When dawn broke, it was gone, but there were fresh claw marks gouged into her home's adobe wall, marks that no human hand could have made. Rosa's story spread like wildfire. The villagers, steeped in tales of shapeshifters and spirits, named the entity El Chameleon, the chameleon, for its ability to wear a human face by day and a monstrous form by night. Soon, others came forward, their voices revealing their fear. Javier Rojas, a 22-year-old shepherd with a quiet demeanor, recounted a chilling encounter on a mountain path. I met a man who said he was a traveler, Javier said, hands shaking as he spoke. But when the sun dipped, his face changed. His arms stretched, wings sprouted, and he flew into the sky. I ran until my legs gave out. Doña Elena, the village's 80-year-old matriarch, swore the chameleon scratched at her door, whispering her name in a voice that echoed her late husband's. It knew things, she said, her eyes wide, things only the dead could know. Fear tightened its grip on San Vicente. The market emptied, replaced by hushed gatherings in the church. Parents forbade children from playing outside, and men patrolled the village with machetes and shotguns. Crosses were nailed above doorways, and amulets of garlic and salt hung from windows. It was like the air itself turned heavy, says Miguel Torres, a shopkeeper who was 16 that summer. His voice faltered as he recalled the dread. You'd hear a twig snap and think, it's here. You'd see a stranger and wonder, is that it? We were prisoners in our own homes. The village's priest, Father Ignacio Morales, a 50-year-old man with a scholar's mind and a warrior's faith, saw the chameleon as a test from God, or a taunt from the devil. Evil has come to San Vicente, he declared from the pulpit, his voice booming through the wooden church. We must stand united, or it will devour us. Father Ignacio, who had studied theology in Bogota, was no stranger to the region's folklore, but this was different. The stories, the marks, the sheer terror in his flock's eyes convinced him this was no mere superstition. He began nightly prayers, sprinkling holy water on thresholds and blessing homes with incense. But the chameleon was undeterred. By July, the incidents grew violent. A farmer named Pablo Gomez found his herd of goats slaughtered, their throats torn open, their blood drained into the earth. It wasn't a jaguar, Pablo told the village council, his face ashen. This was for sport. Days later, Rosa's cousin, Luis Delgado, a wiry 30-year-old known for his bravado, claimed the chameleon attacked him on a moonless night. I was walking home from the cantina, he said, showing gashes on his arm that oozed a strange, dark fluid. It came from nowhere, tall, with wings like a bat. It grabbed me, and its eyes, they burned. Luis's wounds refused to heal, and he began to unravel, raving about a man who followed him in his dreams. A week later, he ran into the jungle and was never seen again. It broke us, Rosa says, her voice barely above a whisper. Now in her late 80s, she sits in a rocking chair, her hands tracing the beads of her rosary. Luis was family. To lose him like that, it was like the chameleon took a piece of our hearts. The village teetered on the edge of collapse. Some whispered of a curse, perhaps tied to a long-forgotten sin, a pact made by ancestors, or a sacred site desecrated. Others suspected a human hand, a madman hiding among them exploiting the chaos. But no one dared accuse their neighbors outright. Trust, once the village's bedrock had crumbled. Father Ignacio, driven by desperation, took a radical step. On August 15, 1977, the Feast of the Assumption, he announced a village-wide exorcism. If this is Satan's work, he told the gathered crowd, I will cast it out. Under a sky heavy with clouds, he led a procession through San Vicente, his black cassock billowing as he swung a censer of burning copal. Villagers followed, clutching candles and chanting the Ave Maria, their voices raised with hope. At each corner of the village, Father Ignacio drove a wooden cross into the ground, anointed with holy oil. For 3 nights, he performed rituals, invoking the Archangel Michael and pleading for divine protection. It was like a war, Miguel recalls, Father Ignacio against something we couldn't see. The exorcism seemed to work. For 10 days, San Vicente was quiet. No howls, no scratches, no sightings. The villagers dared to hope. But on August 26th, a 10-year-old girl named Clara ran screaming from the churchyard, claiming she saw the chameleon perched on the roof, its wings blotting out the stars. It looked at me, she sobbed, and it smiled. The terror returned, fiercer than ever. Father Ignacio, already frail from sleepless nights, was shaken. He told me he felt it watching him, says Ana Lopez, the church's housekeeper. He said it was stronger than any demon he had read about. By early September, Father Ignacio's health collapsed. Confined to his bed, he whispered of a presence that mocked his prayers, a force older than the church itself. On September 12th, he died, his face frozen in a look of defiance. The official report cited heart failure, but the villagers knew better. The chameleon took him, Doña Elena insisted. It broke his spirit. His death was the final blow. Some families fled to nearby towns, others retreated into silence. And then, as if sated, the chameleon vanished. No more sightings and no more attacks. By October, San Vicente was still, the jungle reclaiming its secrets. What was the chameleon of the Andes? The question lingers like mist in the Caqueta valleys. For the faithful, it was a demon, a manifestation of evil that tested San Vicente's soul. Father Ignacio's journals, discovered years later, describe it as a shadow with 1,000 faces, a force tied to the Andes' ancient spirits. Local folklore offers another clue. Stories of the Batman, a shape-shifter who punishes those who stray from tradition. Our elders warned us, Rosa says. The jungle has its guardians. Maybe we angered one. Skeptics see a different story. Dr. Carlos Peña, a Bogotá anthropologist who visited San Vicente in 1983, calls it a textbook case of mass hysteria. In isolated communities, fear is contagious, he explains. Economic stress, guerrilla violence in the region, a charismatic priest. It's a perfect storm for collective delusion. The 1970s were turbulent in Caqueta, with Marxist rebels clashing with government forces nearby. Peña suggests the chameleon was a projection of the village's anxiety, its attacks misinterpretations of natural events, perhaps a large bat or a prowling jaguar. But the physical evidence complicates the narrative. The claw marks on Rosa's wall, measured at 6 inches long and an inch deep, baffled local hunters. Pablo's goats showed wounds no known predator could inflict. Luis's gashes, described by the village midwife as festering with a strange odor, resisted treatment. And then there's Clara's drawing of the chameleon, kept in the church archives. A humanoid figure with elongated limbs, bat-like wings, and eyes that seem to follow you. It's not the work of a child's imagination, Anna insists. She saw something real. Other theories point to a human culprit. Some villagers suspected a hermit known as El Loco, a recluse who lived in the jungle and was rumored to practice dark rituals. He disappeared around the same time as the chameleon, but no evidence linked him to the events. A few whispered of vengeful neighbors, perhaps settling old grudges under the guise of a monster, though the village's small size made secrecy unlikely. More outlandish ideas were posed. A government experiment, a hallucinogenic plant, or even an extraterrestrial visitor circulated but found no traction. The investigation, if it can be called that, was non-existent. The Caqueta police, stretched thin by the region's violence, dismissed the reports as peasant nonsense. A single officer visited San Vicente in August 1977, took a cursory look at the claw marks and left. No forensic tests were conducted, no witnesses formally interviewed. Luis's disappearance was logged as a runaway case, and Father Ignacio's death was buried in bureaucracy. They didn't care about us, Miguel says, his voice edged with anger. To them, we were just a speck in the jungle. Decades later, San Vicente is a ghost of its former self. The coffee boom faded, and many residents moved to cities like Florencia or Bogotá. The church still stands, its walls weathered but adorned with crosses, a silent ward against the past. Rosa, one of the few remaining witnesses, lives in a small house, her windows barred. I still hear it sometimes, she admits, her gaze fixed on the jungle. A rustle, a whisper. It's out there waiting. Miguel, now a grandfather, runs a small store in a nearby town but returns to San Vicente for Mass. We survived, he says, but we'll never be whole. The chameleon of the Andes remains a mystery wrapped in shadow. Was it a demon born of faith and fear, a creature of the wild misjudged by panicked eyes, or a human evil cloaked in myth? In the Andes, where the mountains guard their truths, the answer lies just beyond reach. A flicker in the jungle, a whisper in the dark, a face that shifts when you look too long. If you're enjoying the stories, please consider supporting the research and production that go into bringing them to you by buying me a coffee. The link is in the episode's show notes, and I would greatly appreciate your support. Now, on to today's second story, which is the poison pen. In a quiet Ohio town, a faceless tormentor unleashed a reign of psychological terror. Anonymous letters exposed secrets, shattered lives, and left a trail of questions. Who was the Circleville letter writer, and what drove them to tear a community apart? Let's delve into a mystery that even today still haunts the heartland. This is the story of the poison pen. Circleville, Ohio in the late 1970s. A town of 13,000 souls nestled among rolling fields and factory smokestacks, where life revolved around Friday night football, church potlucks, and the hum of small-town gossip. Neighbors waved from porches and secrets were shared over cups of coffee at the local diner. But in 1976, something dark crept into this idyllic world. A poison pen that would turn neighbor against neighbor and leave a legacy of fear. It began with a single letter slipped into the mailbox of Mary Gillespie, a 34-year-old school bus driver known for a quick laugh and a steady hand on the wheel. The envelope was plain, the handwriting blocky and crude, but the words inside were sharp as a blade. "I know you're having an affair with Gordon Massey. Stop it or you'll pay. I'm watching you." Gordon Massey, the school superintendent, was a married man and a pillar of the community. Mary, married to Ron Gillespie, a factory worker with a protective streak, was stunned. The accusation was baseless, but the letter's details, her daily routes, her children's names, struck her like a violation. Someone wasn't just guessing. This had to have come from someone who knew her and was intimately familiar with her life. "I thought it was a sick joke at first," Mary later told police, her voice steady despite trembling hands. But the letters kept coming. They wouldn't stop. Mary wasn't alone. Mailboxes across Circleville began receiving similar missives, each one a dagger aimed at the town's heart. Teachers, shopkeepers, even the mayor received letters exposing affairs, financial troubles, or petty grudges. The writers seemed to know everything: who was skimming from the till, who was sneaking out at night, who was whispering behind closed doors. "It was like the town had a ghost," said Betty Thompson, a retired librarian who lived through the ordeal. "You'd look at your neighbors and wonder, are they writing about me?" The letters targeting Mary were the most relentless. They arrived weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, each one more venomous than the last. "Your kids aren't safe. Your husband knows. End it with Massey or else." Mary and Ron tried to shield their children, 12-year-old Tracy and 10-year-old Bobby, but the strain was palpable. Ron, a man of few words but fierce loyalty, grew increasingly volatile. He'd sit at the kitchen table staring at those letters, Karen Sue Foley, Mary's sister-in-law, recalls. He'd say, "I'll find this coward. I'll make him pay." The town whispered theories. Was it a jilted lover? A disgruntled school employee? Some even suspected Gordon Massey himself, though he denied any affair and claimed that he too received threatening letters. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, an aging lawman with a reputation for fairness, was stumped. The letters were postmarked locally, but fingerprint tests yielded nothing. Handwriting analysis was a dead end. The block letters were too generic. "We were chasing a phantom," Radcliffe later admitted. "Whoever it was, they were careful, too careful." Then, on August 19th, the mystery took a deadly turn. Late that night, Ron's phone rang. Mary watched as his face darkened, his knuckles whitening around the receiver. He didn't say much, just grabbed his gun and said he was going to end this, she recounted. I begged him to stay, but he was gone. Hours later, police found Ron's pickup truck smashed into a tree on Antrim Road, a desolate stretch outside of town. He was dead at 39. His .38 caliber revolver had been fired, but police were never able to find where the bullet had gone. The coroner ruled Ron's death an accident, citing a blood alcohol of .16, but Mary and her family cried foul. Ron wasn't a drinker, Karen Sue insists, her voice cracking. He was set up. Someone lured him out there. The tragedy emboldened the letter writer. Signs began appearing along Mary's bus route scrawled with accusations. Massey and Gillespie, everyone knows. Parents complained, children whispered, and Mary's reputation crumbled. I'd drive my route and people would stare, she later said. I felt like I was on trial. The harassment reached a horrifying peak in February 1983 when Mary stopped to remove one of the signs. Inside a taped-up box, she found a crude booby trap, a pistol rigged to fire. By sheer luck, it didn't. I could feel my heart stop, Mary told investigators. Whoever did this wanted me dead. Police traced the gun's serial number to Paul Freshour, Karen Sue's husband and Ron's brother-in-law. Paul, a quiet man who worked as a factory supervisor, was an unlikely suspect. He had no clear motive, and his marriage to Karen Sue seemed stable. But the gun was registered to him, and a handwriting expert claimed his block letters matched the writers, though the evidence was shaky at best. In October of 1983, Paul was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 7 to 25 years. I didn't write those letters, he said at his trial, his voice calm but resolute. I'm not that kind of man. The conviction should have closed the case, but then a chilling twist. The letters kept coming. Behind bars, Paul received taunting notes, as did Mary, Sheriff Radcliffe, and dozens of others. You got the wrong man, one letter sneered. The writer is still out there. Circleville descended into paranoia. If Paul wasn't the writer, who was? And how are they still operating undetected with police scrutiny at its peak? It was like the town was cursed, says Tom Reynolds, a former diner owner who received a letter accusing him of tax evasion. You'd look at your friends, your coworkers, even your family and think, is it you? Are you the one? Some suspected a conspiracy, a few corrupt officials perhaps. A wilder theory suggested Gordon Massey was orchestrating the letters to deflect from his own scandals, but he passed a polygraph and then later moved away in the 1980s. Investigators were baffled. The letters' volume, hundreds, possibly thousands over nearly 2 decades, suggested an obsessive, almost superhuman effort. Some were mailed from Columbus, 30 miles away, others from within Circleville itself. The writers seemed to know when police were closing in, switching tactics, or lying low. We tried stakeouts, mail surveillance, everything, says retired Deputy Jim Carter, shaking his head. It was like they were always one step ahead. For Mary, the toll was unbearable. Her husband was dead and her reputation in tatters. She left her job, moved her children to a new town, and tried to rebuild. I just wanted peace, she said in a rare 1990s interview, her face lined with exhaustion. But every time I thought it was over, another letter would come. Paul Freshour, released in 1994 after serving 10 years, maintained his innocence until his death in 2012. He spent his final years researching the case, compiling a dossier of letters and suspects, but found no answers. Whoever did this, he wrote in a journal, they're either dead or they're laughing. By the mid-1990s, the letters dwindled, then stopped, as if the writer had tired of their game or passed away. Circleville began to heal, its younger residents unaware of the terror that once gripped their town. But for those who lived through it, the scars remain. "It changed us," Betty Thompson says, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't trust people the same way after something like that." Today, the Circleville letters remain one of America's strangest unsolved mysteries. Was it a lone obsessive, a spurned lover, or a cabal of locals with a vendetta? Did Ron Gillespie die by accident, or was he silenced to protect the writer's identity? And what drove someone to wage a decades-long campaign of psychological warfare against a small town? Somewhere in the faded pages of those hateful letters, the truth lies buried. But in Circleville, the shadow of the poison pen lingers, a reminder that some secrets are written in ink too dark to ever be erased. The stories presented are inspired by true events. Names may have been changed for privacy reasons. New episodes are uploaded every Monday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained, be sure to press that follow or subscribe button and turn on all reminders so you're alerted whenever an episode drops. Until next time, thank you for listening to When Reality Frays.